All right, we're recording now. I just want to make sure, Elizabeth, that it's okay that we could put this up in the Royal afterwards.
It's fine with me, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And everyone, welcome to our third Stamp Talks. And I'm really happy to announce that this is supported by Sparks Auctions. You can check out their website. It's at sparks-auctions.com, and I thank them for their generous support. Today's speaker is Elizabeth Hisey. I think I hopefully said that right.
Yep.
And I sent out, when everyone registered, in the blurb, her background, which her philatelic background is really impressive. And I first met her as an international judge at the Royal in 2019. She'll be talking today on telling stories with postcards, and I turn it over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Just before we begin, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the Royals Stamp Chat. It's a pleasure to do it, and I'm hoping that everybody enjoys my little presentation on telling stories with postcards. Because it's telling stories with postcards, and in telling stories you have chapters. So chapter 1 is going to be an overview of the postcards. So as a brief history, as you know, postcards were evolved in the mid-1800s. They've had their heyday, and though they're still around, they've lost ground to the internet and email. Australia and New Zealand have been having competitive exhibits since the mid-1990s, as does FIPA. Here in the US, we started competitive exhibiting in early 2000s as a separate division. When the new manual came out in 2017, postcard exhibiting was compressed into being part of the general class. On the FIP side, there are still some exhibits, but it has not yet been declared an official class. So in the early years, postcards were mostly private mailing cards. They were undivided and no message was allowed. So I'm sure that a lot of you collectors are probably aware that when you have some postcards, you'll find there are messages written on the front, which might detract from the actual picture of the postcard, but they weren't allowed to put messages on the back. With the rapid expansion of usage, year ending in 1908, there were 678 million postcards were mailed in the US versus the population of 88.7 million. So you can imagine how many postcards were being sent. Below, you can see an undivided back and how it was with the stamp box to tell you how much to put on it. Moving on to the golden era, and I think these are probably everybody's favorite period of postcards. Messages were allowed with the divided backs. They were hugely popular. There was an explosion of publishers and printers. Millions of subjects. I mean, what I'm going to touch on tonight is a very small fraction. There were a wide variety of types and gimmicks. I mean, you've got the Halloweens, you've got the big fold-out ones, you've got the see-through ones, you've got glitter ones. I mean, it's mind-boggling how many there are. And also many of them at that time were produced in Germany. Moving on to the next era, which was the linen era, the 1930s to the 1960s. These became very popular as more tourist cards, showing city views and attractions. Because they're based on linen, and you can see that in the example I'm showing, that it's a textured surface. So the picture quality got a little blurry, but it's still very colorful. And then from 1939 to present are the chromes. And I personally don't like them. I find them rather garish, but they are fantastic in reproductive art. Again, all subjects, all topics. This is a postcard from Folkestone in England. They're very colorful and more collectible than if they're being mailed. And mostly their specific order is for collectors rather than correspondence. You'll find them sometimes in drugstores or chemists, and at various places. But it's really interesting. If you go around, certainly if I go around here in Sarasota looking for postcards, there aren't very many around. Okay, moving on to chapter 2. I'm going to show you a wide variety of subjects. Some of them are my collections, and some of them are exhibits put together by some very well-renowned postcard exhibitors. In this telling of stories, I'm rather focusing on getting you to go from your collection and then making it into an exhibit. So here we have a biological story. This is Phil Steger. I don't know how many of you know him. He lives in St. Petersburg. He has been an APS judge. He has retired. He is, as he calls himself, a palm nut. So this was an appropriate subject for him to do a postcard on the royal palm. It was also, he said it was 10 years old. This is several years ago, so it's probably one of the older exhibits around. And at that time, you weren't paying a lot for cards. So in his exhibit, he starts off the journey. And so although this is about palms, he's brought in trains showing how you're starting the journey. He's also brought in postcards on hotels and where you could stay with them. And in this particular one, which I think is really fascinating, is it's 3 photographs or postcards of the same hotel, of the same view, but they're all by different publishers, and they're also different colors. And you can see that there's different fonts where they've talked about the Palm Hotel. And this is really, from the judging point of view, if you do what was called mini studies, in your exhibit, it shows that you have recognized that there are other cards out there that have a similar view. And further on in the talk, I will talk about one of my exhibits. He also goes on to show other countries, the Barbados, that grow palm trees, and finishes up as an epilogue with weird and bizarre palm trees. The bottom, this one down here, is actually a stalactite, or I think it's a stalactite that comes down. Another exhibit from Phil. I don't know, I'm sure all of you, your collecting was started by what I call an aha moment. You fell in love with a postcard, or somebody gave you a postcard. In this case, Elliot Landau, who has sadly has died, gave Phil the last postcard in the exhibit, which was an actual real photo. And so Phil used that to build a whole postcard exhibit around the Eastland. Unfortunately, the Eastland burnt it, but it came back again, and they raised the hulk, and it has a new life as the USS Willamette. This is an exhibit by another exhibitor called Bill Schultz, and he has taken the toll house gates and their houses and their routes and shown the progression of them through the years. Here, he, as important in exhibiting, has put a little timeline to show you where you're going to be in the exhibit. Also, he's shown us a map of where the toll roads are going to go. In philatelic exhibits, as in philatelic exhibits, in postcard exhibits, you can add other items that will further your story. So here he's put a rates of the tolls as though they would be in the exhibits, sorry, as they would be on the toll roads. In his epilogue, although it's not a postcard, but it's a really nice stereograph showing a toll road. And then he finishes up with the modern day toll road. This is an exhibit on the cruise line, which I'm sure you're familiar with around the Great Lakes. This exhibitor took a tour guide of the summer tours of 1914, and you can see he's put the actual cover on his exhibit, and then he's set up the purpose, background, and treatment. When we come into the third chapter where I talk about exhibiting, we will talk a bit more about this. In his exhibit, he takes various trips. So this one is from Chicago to South Haven in 1903 to 1906, leaving Chicago, so it's going through the bridges. Here's trip number 29 in Saratoga Springs. And because although he's talking about the ship line, he's also talking about what they would have seen when they were in Saratoga. So you have a very nice postcard of the races and also of the ferry. This particular postcard here in the center is one of probably the hardest ones to find, because not a lot of people have taken the interiors of hotels. And if you can find the interior of your hotel, you're very lucky. Here is trip 6, sailing on Lake Michigan. Again, he's also put a little map in to show you where this trip actually went. And at the end of the cruise, how do you get back from the ship? You take the train. This is by an exhibitor by Dawn Hammond, and she's taken, and it's a one-frame exhibit on a gentleman who built his business empire with ostrich feathers. And it's a fascinating exhibit on how ostrich feathers were used in fashion and how the ostriches were harvested, how they grew, what the tourists saw when they came to this various ostrich park, and then why they went out of fashion. Because at the end, in the late 1915s, people no longer wore ostrich feathers. This is an exhibit on the working elephants. Kathy Johnson has a very good philatelic exhibit on Ceylon, and it's tea and coffee. And in her accumulation of material for that exhibit and her collection, she found that she ended up with a whole lot of postcards of the elephants of Ceylon. And so she decided to do a one-frame exhibit on the elephants and how they worked and what they were working. And so she talks about the characterizations, what they had. Again, she has an exhibit plan and then how the elephants were used to pull out tree trunks. Also, they were given as tourist rides, and then finally at the end, what happens? They were shot for their tusks. Very sad. This is an exhibit by a guy called Bill DiPaolo, who decided to do an exhibit on Las Vegas and how it arose from this, how it grew out of the desert. And so he starts off with the fabulous Las Vegas, and it goes from 1900 to 2000. So that's 100 years. It's quite a long stand. Here, he's shown you a map of what he's going to be talking about. And you can see down here his organization of the various era and what you're going to be seeing within each era. And then he starts at the beginning, the city begins. You see the desert, you see the trains coming. And then as the town begins to grow. What Bill has done in this exhibit, which is very interesting, is he's put a timeline along the bottom on each page. So you can see how it's progressing throughout the years. And then his end is ready for the next 100 years. And so in this case, he's using a very modern one because that's what he had to use to show the year 2000. This is another exhibit by Dawn Hammond. She started collecting the postcards of the Panama Pacific International Exhibition in San Francisco in 1915. This is an 8-frame exhibit. It shows you, again, she has a plan of what you're going to be seeing, the prelude, and then various publishers and various other aspects of the tour, of the exhibit. Here, you'll see this little icon here of a little part of the, like a museum building. This is where she's using to show highlighted items. So we've gone, so 100 years later, memories. So these are all memory flashbacks to the exhibit. They're sort of copies of older exhibit postcards. And here we are walking around the exposition. You're getting ready to walk, so you're going to see the various crowds. You're seeing where people are walking. This is one of my exhibits. I don't know how many of you know about Houston, but they have a stamp show, or they've been having a stamp show in September, and they pick a color every year. And so several years ago, the color was red. And so I thought, well, red, what am I going to do for red? And so I decided to use Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. It's a one-frame exhibit. So here you have Little Red Riding Hood. This is actually a colored real photograph. And then the epilogue is when the hunter kills the wolf and rescues Grandma and the Little Red Riding Hood from inside the wolf. A little gruesome, but Grimm's fairy tales are quite gruesome. I did very well with this exhibit. It won the red competition, and I actually managed to win the single frame grand with it, which I was very surprised because I knocked out some actual philatelic exhibitors. So that was it was very good. It was good fun. This is another one of my exhibits. This one grew out of my collecting for my Christmas dinner at the Portland Hotel. I found out that there were what were called exaggerated fruits. And this is a gentleman called Edward Mitchell. And he actually published and produced his own cards. They're what might call photo montage, which means he's taken a photograph of a watermelon and a photograph of a train, train carrier, and the background. And then he superimposes them on each and then takes another photograph. And then they were hand colored afterwards and then printed. This page here actually has they all look like the same, but they're actually all different publishers, except for this one down here, which is a Mitchell. People throughout the years, that I'm sure all of you collectors have known, is that people steal pictures, or maybe not steal them, maybe just borrow them, and will publish them under their own name or a different name. This is the epilogue. In that exhibit, it was very hard to figure out how to organize it because it was one publisher, one printer. The cards are basically all the same format. So what I did was I started at the top of above the ground with the trees and went down to underground with the potatoes and the carrots and the onions because they grow underground. Also, in order to try and extend my philatelic knowledge, or deltiology knowledge, I did studies of the backgrounds of all the various cards and also the numbers and the writings. And then here down at the bottom, a lot of them had different copyrights. And so that all came into my deltiology knowledge. Excuse me. This was another exhibit for Houston. The color was purple. And so I picked lilac. And so I went looking for lilac postcards. And so what we have here is, I did it as a year, lilac sentiments. So it was title page, New Year, Valentine's, Easter, Christmas, and going on. And here, again, it's a handy exhibiting technique, is if you're using double pages and you don't have a balanced page, if you draw a line down here, you can separate the last item. So although it's one page, you have made a division. So here we have greetings, and I've ended up with a condolence card. This was another exhibit. Again, it was orange. So what I'm trying to show you here is the fact that any idea, and I'm sure, I'm going to look forward to hearing from you all as to what you collect and why you collect it. But when you have something like Houston, and you basically have a year to put the exhibit together, because you find out what the color is there the last night. So this was orange that year, and so I decided to do the National Orange Show in San Bernardino. I could have done Florida oranges, but I thought that was too commonplace. What was interesting with this exhibit was the fact that in other cases, I mean, like the big fire of San Francisco and Chicago, they took postcards. They made postcards of the fire. In this case, when it started in the 11th, the first one was in 1911. And they had no postcards, so I had to go and get a newspaper photograph. And then I showed various displays as it was through the years. Unfortunately, it burnt to the ground in 1949. As of yet, I have not found a postcard. If any of you have a postcard, please, of the burning of the Orange Show in San Bernardino in 1949, I will pay for it. I would love to get it. Earlier on, I talked about doing mini studies on your exhibit. This is going to be an exhibit. I haven't gone much before 3 or 4 pages, but I had an exhibit on the Poland Spring Hotel. And again, in my accumulation of material, I started collecting pictures of the hotel, and I found that there were not hundreds, I probably have about 50 of all of the same view. So this is the earliest one, and here are 3 more. You can see it's changing. I mean, the flag changes, the awnings change, the cars change. So I'm hoping that to have enough to put together a 1-frame exhibit, just showing how people took the same view of a hotel, but it was different publishers, different eras, and I think it'll be an interesting exhibit. We'll have to see how it goes. So, if I haven't bored you already, let's move on to chapter 3, which is going to be setting up your exhibit, using your postcards to tell a story as an exhibit. So you need to understand the rules. We have a judging manual, and chapter 3 talks about the big 4. Read the specific guidelines on exhibiting picture postcards, and read the glossary to understand terms. On your title page, as an exhibit, you need a title page and the synopsis, treatment, research and knowledge, rarity, and presentation. The title page is what is your subject? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? And then how have you developed the story? And where did you get the information from? So treatment, as I showed you as we were going through the exhibits, most people put a plan using chapters and headings. And also, if you start with an outline and write your story with a beginning and a middle and end, and then fill in your material for the story, trying to make the material fit the plan, not the other way around. And the other thing is, sometimes even in philatelic and deltiology exhibits, people say, well, I have to put this card in. It's my best card, or it's my best stamp. If it doesn't help the story, you have to leave it at home. And then you have to explain to people what the challenge was to develop the story. In the ones for Houston, my red one, orange, and one, there wasn't a lot of challenge because I was doing it in a year. So I didn't get a lot of points for difficulty of acquisition because basically I was going to eBay and stamp shows to buy material. So there wasn't a lot of challenge in that. In the knowledge and research, develop your subject as you would any other exhibit. Research your subject. It's all very well just to collect postcards of cats, but if you're going to exhibit, you need to explain what kind of cats, when did they appear, where were they, and you also need to know what you're talking about and show us, the judges, what you know you're talking about. Sorry. Also, in deltiology knowledge, in philatelic knowledge, you're talking about the back of the card or the cover or the stamps. In the deltiological, you're talking about the picture. So don't just say what's obvious on the card. Tell us what the information means. Make some assumptions based on your knowledge. And if there's no reference material, say so. And particularly in the synopsis, because sometimes you have a card and there's just no way you can find out who published it or where. There is, if you go to the Metropolitan Postal Club, you can sometimes compare postcards and say, well, this looks like the same thing as this one, so maybe I could make the assumption that it was this printer. Rarity, very difficult to evaluate. We all know how many postcards are out there. We've all been to postcard shows. We know boxes and boxes of them. So being able to tell people the difficulty of acquisition is probably, as I say down here, is probably estimates on how many you've seen in your years of collecting this. Also, rarity doesn't necessarily equal scarcity. A card might be difficult to find, but if they've only printed half a dozen, particularly in the real photo cards where they maybe only made 10 copies. So it's up to you to explain to the jury as to what the rarity factor is. Presentation. In those exhibits that I showed you, you saw that there was a lot of variety in how people were mounting their exhibits. Try to avoid the railroad tracks, which is, straightened lines. It's very boring to look at, and it doesn't look like you really care. Matting, I think matting helps to center the card on the paper and to make it pop from the paper, particularly if you've got the older cards, which have got a little rusty, so you're trying to make them look as good as they can. Overlapping cards. Down south in Australia and New Zealand, they're not too fond of overlapping cards because they think you might have, you're hiding something. Here, we're not so vigilant about that. And sometimes, particularly in my exaggerated fruits, when I'm trying to get, I think like 50 cards into 16 pages. As you can see behind me, I have a page of my exhibit. And so I have overlapped them in some ways, but try not to overlap so you're hiding anything that's vital, like the copyright or a number or whatever. I mean, sometimes if there's a little bit of blue sky, you can, and it's on the same, so you can overlap them that way. As I also said in the showing you the various exhibits, use of maps or other directly related items are really good and okay if they help to move the story along. Oh, I spelled if with 2 F's. Oh well. Okay, so just to rehash, the title page is very important, particularly with the new manual, because now we're saying for the exhibitor to tell us what they're going to show us, and then we'll judge them on how well they've told us what they've done. There are numerous varieties: topicals, geographical, topical, historical, narrative, class, by artist, photographer, or format. Treatment is always the story, outline, outline, outline. I cannot repeat that enough. Also, to have a beginning and a middle and end. Sometimes when I'm judging and I come across an exhibit that doesn't have that, I'll go up to the exhibitor and I say, if the frame opened and all your pages fell out, would somebody know how to put it back together again? And they'll say, oh, I understand what you mean. The fact that it needs to flow from the beginning to the middle to the end. And also that each page relates and advances the story. Choosing your material, the challenge factor, the appeal. When you have cards, it's rather like when you have a crash cover. I mean, obviously it's going to be burnt, but trying to find cards that are not ragged around the edges, that don't have the cancel across the picture. Choose material that helps you develop your story. Also, when you're choosing your material, is it furthering your story? Is it telling your story? Or does it suddenly go off on a tangent and you say, oh, that wasn't part of what they were talking about? Again, to show the best material, to show your challenge. Sometimes you can put a card in and say to the jury, I know it's not the best, I'm waiting to find a better one. And the most attractive material and the best quality is again also saying, try to get the best you can to put in your exhibit. In your write-up, again, research and knowledge, implied knowledge by selection, explicit knowledge by accurate description of the material, and utilizing references when you can find them. And particularly important is personal study and new conclusions that you've drawn from looking at your collection and saying, oh, I hadn't noticed that. I should talk about it. Presentation. Is it attractive? Do people want to look at it? Is it balanced on the pages and in the frame? Again, when I talked about that line down, if I had made it more obvious, it would not have been balanced, but just that line, it gave the balance. And does it look like you've taken some time and not really rushed and just put it up there for it to be there? So the final chapter is resources. Have fun, tell stories. Any questions? So the resources, the Metropolitan Postcard Club is fantastic. They have printers, they have glossaries, they have publishers, and it's all alphabetized. There is a great outfit in Germany called the Postcard Album. They bring out a handbook, I don't know how you would call it, a reference book every year, and it's well worth it. Mary Martin, who I'm sure a lot of you know, has just brought out a fantastic book, the Guidebook of Collectible Postcards, very informative, and at the back of it has a whole wonderful list of publishers and other information. I've just come across this site. It's called Postcard History. Every week they come out with, Mondays or Tuesdays, they come out with an email with postcard stories, and they take 4 postcards and there's a little write-up on each postcard. If you want to learn a bit more about exhibiting, that link there is written by Jeff Long in New Zealand and is very helpful. As you all know, and I'm sure you have them on multiple postcard exhibits, Abe Books is a good source. In identifying prints, I found a book by Bamber Gascoigne is very handy in helping you sort out whether they're chromoliths, lithographs, whatever. And then I do direct you to the American Association of Philatelic Exhibitors for help on exhibiting. So that'd be me.
Well, great. I'm going to go to some questions. Thank you very much. That was fascinating. Before I get anyone else's question, I'm going to, because I'm the host, ask a couple of my own questions. How important is philatelic knowledge in a postcard exhibit? Like, for instance, if you have like a rare cancel or a rare destination, does that matter at all, or
no?
No.
You use the information on the back of the card to date your card to give your exhibit depth. If it has a strange destination or a special cancel, you can mention it, but it's not furthering your story. I mean, it's not helping you talk about your postcard exhibit, but it does show that you have some philatelic knowledge, that you have recognized what it is. So it is a tertiary or no, it's a minor point, but no, it doesn't. It's not going to get you kudos.
So if the cancel was like from a town called Onion, on the back of that Onion one that you have in the background, would that be relevant?
Yeah, I said, okay, because if it's being mailed, I will put mail from to and the dates on the description. So yes, I would have put Onion and probably put it in red or underlined it to bring it out.
Great. I'm going to ask the questions from some of our members here. So David Piercy asked, mixing postcards into otherwise philatelic exhibits, any limitations or cautions?
If you're doing an airmail exhibit, sometimes people will put in picture postcards of the airplanes. If you're doing a display exhibit, you can use them, but they should not be a focus. Now, on that, saying that, David McNamee has done a postcard postal history exhibit on the military war in Natal, and it's 50-50 postcards and postal history. But he goes in and says, again, with the new manual, we open it up to anybody can do what they want, providing they tell us what they're going to do and why they're doing it. So in David's case, it won a large gold. I mean, so yes, you can with circumstances.
John Smith asks, why Germany as a primary producer in the early 1900s?
I think because they were a lot more sophisticated than the Americans were in their printing processes. And there were hundreds of them. I mean, if you go to the Metropolitan, you find that the German publishers they were just a lot more sophisticated. I mean, they were, even among any other European countries, I mean, they dominated the market.
Leslie Selby asks, when I have used postcards in philatelic exhibitions, judges have said I should include info on the printers, how they're made, and how many were produced. Is there some sort of database that we can consult to help?
The Metropolitan Postcard Club has all the publishers, and no, they don't, sorry. They have a lot of the publishers and printers where you can find the information as to when the printing company was in business, where it was in business, what the address was. The back of Mary Martin's book also has a lot of helpful information. But so I would say that the Metropolitan Postal Club probably has the largest database of what is the postcard album. The German company they spend a lot of their time on real postcards, and they have a very good resource of the various printing marks of the real photographs.
Jim DeVito, please slow down. Can't see anything.
Can't hear anything.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure
Sorry,
what he means by. Okay. An anonymous attendee, do the frames use actual postcards, e.d. not reproductions?
Yes.
All right. Paul Benoit, I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Please comment about hand-colored postcards.
You mean real photograph tinted ones, or people who have taken a postcard and then hand colored it?
Well, okay. Let's say someone did a personal drawing. Is that considered more valuable, or in an exhibit way, not in a cash way?
There's an exhibit I saw in Charlotte, North Carolina, that was of Japanese prisoners of war cards that were all handwritten. So they were very, very rare, and it was a very interesting exhibit. It depends whether it helps you tell your story. I mean, it's what do you collect? I mean, are you collecting hand-colored ones? Then you know what you're collecting.
Gary asks, what about publishing a story using postcards? Are most items or images in the public domain now, and how to get permission to use them?
Okay, read that one again.
Let me just find it again.
I would say if a postcard has been printed, I mean, it's out there for anybody to use. So
Okay,
yes, we want to exhibit it.
The exact question is, what about publishing a story using postcards? Are most items or images in the public domain now, and how to get permission to use an image?
Okay, so he's going to try to get a postcard that's already been published in an article. In that case, you probably need to go back to the source. In my Poland Spring, I have some pictures of Herman Ricker, who was one of the original guys. I went to the main historical museum, and I got permission to use their photograph in my exhibit. But if you buy it on the street or you buy it from a dealer, it's yours.
Philip asks, is postally used cards important for an exhibit?
In the fact that they give you some details as to when the postcard was used and where it was sent to. I would say in the exhibit that's behind me here, it's about 50-50 of used and unused. So, I mean, if you have a postcard and you've got two, and you've got one that's used and one that's not used, if the used one is in as good a condition as the unused one, then I would use it, because you can use the information on the back of it to give depth to your story.
Silo asks, are mounts or displays showing both sides of the postcard allowed?
Well, that would be very difficult, because unless you have see-through frames. If you want to show the back of the postcard, because you have to remember that in a postcard exhibit, the picture side is the most important side. If you want to show the back of it, then scan it and make it at least 25 or 30% less than the original cover.
And regarding the hand colored one, it's photos that are hand colored was what the question was specifically about.
Those are rare because somebody has taken the time to hand color them. And so, yes, I mean, if you've got some that, I mean, if you've got a family picnic and they're being colored, and I would say, yeah, put it in, because I mean, it's shown that somebody has taken the time to color it.
Jerry asks, typically how long are these exhibits?
The longest they can be is 10 frames, because that's what is only allowed. I would say most exhibits are 8 frames. No, I would say probably 5 frames. There are some 1, 5, 8, and occasionally you'll see some 10s.
How common are the one frame exhibits for postcards?
Quite popular, because you can use, well, I was just going to say, I do a lot of one frame postcards because I get small subjects. And if you do a one frame exhibit, it has to be very tight in telling your story in 16 pages. So you have to be very careful of having the subject tight enough for one frame.
Yeah, I just want to mention here for a second, for Capex 22 is a one frame exhibit, and postcards, if they're one frames, are perfectly allowed. So sign up everyone that wants to send a postcard exhibit to Capex.
I will send some up.
Marion asks, I would like to have a copy of that postcard info list.
If she wants to send me her email or give me an email, or what I can do, Joe, is I can scan it and send it to you, and you can disperse it.
Okay, I can do that. I will, if anyone that wants a copy of it, send an email to stamptalks@capex22.org, and I will answer through there. Any suggestions about using postcards for a family history story?
I was, yes, I mean, my husband was toying with doing a postcard exhibit of a family trip he and his family took from Fayetteville, New York, out to the West Coast. So yes, I mean, if you can flesh it out enough of where you were going or what you were trying to do, or if it's your uncle was in this regiment, or, I mean, to say that, I mean, the world is your oyster. I mean, there are so many postcards, and anything you want to do out there, it's just, it's fantastic.
He also asks, or social history or pioneering in the West. So basically, everything's wide open as long as it tells a concise story, right?
It tells a concise story, and in your introduction, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. You tell the story as to, as we said, why, what, where, and when, and then tell the story.
Lee Hogg asks, the use of ephemera, I don't know that word, ephemera in a postcard exhibit, i.e. feather or solid picture on a PC and an actual medal that represents one on his chest. Is there any limit on the amount?
You have to be discreet. Otherwise it becomes a display exhibit. But if you want, I mean, if you've got a 5-frame exhibit and you put in a couple of feathers or medals, yes, but you need to tread the fine line between a postcard exhibit, which is about postcards, as opposed to a display exhibit, which is about putting in everything but the kitchen sink.
I have a comment here. I know copyright for using in a book. I'm not sure what that means. And another one is yes, like sandwiched in a glass. I'm not really sure what that question means either.
Well, that I have one. I have a wildflower that was sandwiched in a glass and sent. So if it was mailed, I don't know whether it actually qualifies as a postcard. I mean, mine is very interesting, but I don't think I would put it in a postcard exhibit.
Oh, okay, interesting. Jane says, you may need to explain what a frame is and the number of pages which fit.
That's why I was asking, is whether I was talking to exhibitors or just collectors. A frame is basically 3 foot by 4 foot and holds 16 8.5 by 11 pages. What you see behind me is a double page. So it's 8.5 by 17, 11 by 17. And it's a double page. And in a frame, you would have 8 of those in a frame. Thank you, Jane.
As a postcard, clubs have Zoom meetings for which we can scan our cards into PowerPoint for the meeting. We see things that have been missed. For example, the faint impression of a cancel seen in the scan that allows us to know the location, or very small copyright that becomes visible under a scan. One can learn a lot more about a card by enlarging or magnifying that. Yes, that's very true. Thank you for that comment, because I find even for in regular postal exhibits, that's the case. But I don't know if you have any comments on that.
No.
How do you feel about colored print to highlight key items? From Brenda Hoyles.
That comes under the rarity thing. Yes, I mean you need to make the judges aware that it's a rare item. So in some people they do it in red, some people do it with what we call the dots or arrows. If you put on their title page that if they see a red statement, that means it's a rare item. Yeah.
Could you type the email address to request a list? Yes, I'll do that again in a minute. And we get another comment. Love your veggie postcard exhibit. What message or story was it to tell? I don't recognize the rest.
What was the story?
What message or story was it to tell? Yes.
I was showing, because I have so many cards in it, I was showing the whole of his series. So I had gone off and I found the fact how many Mitchell postcards he had printed with the exaggerated fruits. And so that was the whole selection. This one up here, I don't know if people can see where my hand is. I was at a stamp show thinking I had got all of the postcards and found this one. So it was a surprise to me to find that. I thought I had them all.